Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's first video. We're going to look at the JMA free monthly forecast for today's first video. This is going to take us through the winter, through December, January, February, winter 2018. 19. So the JMA does its one monthly forecast, of course, which we always do on a Friday. JMA Friday is kind of like the full weekly update, and that's updated every week by the Japanese Meteorological Agency. But they also have a seasonal model that covers like 3 monthly timescales. So this month's update from the JMA for the next 3 months is covering the full winter period. And of course, we'll be doing the third and final winter 2018-19 seasonal model roundup on Saturday. It'll be the first video up on Saturday morning. You'll be able to see something like 11 or 12 long-range models to see what they're all showing for winter of 2018-19 for the third and final time this season. And the JMA seasonal model update will form part of that seasonal model roundup. But there's a lot of information we can get from the JMA. We don't have enough time to go through everything that you can glean from this model because we have all those other models to look at. So we always like to take this one out, have a look at it in its own terms and see what it's showing. So that's what we're going to do for today's first video. So I'll go back for you in a second, just to say that today's second video we'll have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days, and that's going to take us into the start of December. So we're going to start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly chart for December 2018 from the JMA season model. We're looking at the North Pole view down first of all. So this is the North Pole of the Northern Hemisphere, just here, mid-latitudes. Northern Hemisphere are around there. Red extrapolates to above average heights, yellow, orange and red extrapolates to above average heights, which is high pressure, and blue to low pressure. So the JMA for December is placing a ridge of above average heights just out to the west and northwest of the British Isles. There's no real trough to our east, but presumably there'd be some sort of trough through here across the northern and central parts of Europe, which would leave us doing something a bit like that with the flow and with the jet. That's what it looks like to me anyway. And so a rather sort of west-northwesterly type flow coming up in December. Not desperately cold, but probably on the cool side, probably quite chilly. There is a little bit of a hint of some northern blocking going on up here as well, but it's not all that strong. I think just a rather chilly, not particularly wet, probably reasonably dry, but rather chilly, rather cool northwesterly December being forecast there. Now we go through to January. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly flow chart for January, and we see a strengthening blocking signal is appearing around Greenland and Iceland, and also to the north of Scandinavia around Svalbard. And so it does appear that we're generating some really quite large northern blocking there. Now I've got this ridge extending down through the Atlantic, so there's a bit of a mid-Atlantic ridge going on. Again, no particular trough, interestingly, across central parts of Europe, but with all of that ridging, you see there is a trough over in the eastern part of America. With all of that ridging, you would think that there's likely to be a trough underneath it through central parts of Europe. So I would expect for Central Europe to see something similar to what's happening on the eastern side of America. So essentially you would get a blocking signal up here and going over to there. You would get then a trough just there and probably a trough somewhere through there as well. So 2 troughs on either side of the blocking, if you see what I mean. Essentially that could be quite a coldish January, I think. I doubt the model will show it to be particularly cold because it's wanting to keep its ridge extending down into the west of Europe. So the model probably won't show a particularly cold month. But with such a high level of blocking as the model is forecasting there over the northern latitudes for January, I think we could be in line for quite a cold month with that one. And then look at this. This is February, and this looks quite exciting if you want cold weather, because it really does go to town with this blocking, and it places it over Greenland we've got this trough. We do have a trough now underneath that blocking across much of Central Europe. There's also a trough still across eastern parts of America into the Atlantic. So this is how you get both sides of the Atlantic, both Eastern America and Western Europe. It's how you get both sides of the Atlantic cold with this sort of level of northern blocking that we see here over Greenland. We send the jet stream a very long way south. The jet would be going through there somewhere into southern Europe and North Africa. And so we pull cold air into that trough out of Canada, into Eastern America, but we also pull cold air out of the Arctic and Siberia into the trough that's across much of Europe. So that is how you get both sides of the Atlantic cold in the winter. It's an idea, but if it gets cold in Eastern America, it will always be mild in Western Europe and in the UK, and that is often the case, but not always. You can, if you get the blocking in the correct position, you can get both sides of the Atlantic cold at the same time, and that's exactly what we see there for February. So that will be a very cold and a very wintry February, not just for the UK, but for many parts of Northern Europe as well. Right, let's have a look at the tropical and mid-latitude view and see all the other information that we can get from the JMA. So the British Isles just here in the top right-hand corner of the chart as you are looking at it. Reminder of December's 500 millibar height anomaly with high pressure out to the west of the country and also to some degree up to the northwest as well. Probably, we think, bring down a bit of a west-northwesterly type flow. So let's look at temperatures first of all. Temperature anomalies during December are being forecast by the JMA to be average to slightly above average, a slightly milder than average month being forecast there. Not a big deviation, but certainly a little bit above average with the temperature anomaly. Precipitation anomalies, even though the Atlantic is rather blocked up, precipitation anomalies are coming out a little bit above average, so rather unsettled with that west to northwesterly flow. Not too far from average with the temperatures, and probably some quite chilly weather at times, I would have thought. Let's see if we can make out the mean wind directions, so we can look at the black arrows. Just here. It's always a little bit difficult to make out, but I think you can just about see that the flow coming into the UK is kind of like westerly, but there are hints of northerlies actually going down here, north to northeasterlies. So possibly a little bit more cold potential actually than I thought based on the 500 millibar height anomaly, and that the model is showing. The model is actually showing a little bit above average with the temperature, but the black arrows are hinting at rather more of a north sort of flow coming into the UK rather than west-northwest. It's kind of like northwest to north. So, and again, you see over here the black arrows coming down to central parts of Europe also generally from the north. So that would imply the chance of a rather colder month, even in December, but obviously nowhere near what's going to happen in February if the model is right, but some colder potential perhaps in December. Then we're into January with the above average heights. I can't see the Arctic view, but we know the above average heights are building up to here around Greenland and also going to the north of Svalbard, but they extend down into the North Atlantic as well. This trough in the eastern part of America is deepening, but there's no corresponding trough in January across central parts of Europe, which I'm a little bit dubious about. Temperature anomalies. I said temperature anomalies are likely to be holding up. They're still holding up in January, despite those appreciable levels of northern blocking. January is still forecast to have average or slightly milder than average temperatures. Notice much of northern and northeastern and East America are cold. Much of Europe also looking rather cold. I am quite dubious about that. With such a high level of northern blocking around Greenland, but also to the north of Svalbard, I think we would expect to see cold air being pushed out of the Arctic and down into Europe. So I think it's overcooking the temperatures a little bit there for January. Precipitation-wise, going on to the drier than average side, so a drier month in January compared to December. And let's have a look at the mean wind direction if we can. Again, try to make out those black arrows. which are always rather difficult to make out. So the main wind direction looks like it's kind of like northeast, or maybe even hinting to our south, being easterly. So again, we've got wind direction from quite a cold direction. I mean, we're talking about the middle of winter, we're talking about January, and the mean wind direction, as indicated by the model, is going to be a sort of northeast to east. So that's not going to be a warm wind direction in January. Obviously, you can see how those easterly winds are coming across Europe via these black arrows. I mean, they're originating around here across sort of central parts of Russia. The black arrows then are coming across Europe, heading in that direction. Some of it's going down to there in towards the Mediterranean. But we would be importing some of those easterly winds into the UK as well. I struggle to see how we could get a mild of an average month with the mean wind direction in from the east or northeast in January. So I think shave off a couple of degrees of the temperature anomaly. Not a severely cold month, but certainly there is quite a bit of cold potential there in January. And then it gets more extreme as we go through into February. Now, I haven't looked at the temperature anomaly as I've got these charts up, but if this model is not forecasting a colder than average month in February, I'll be very, very surprised. But this is the height anomaly. It's going for this blocking, very strong blocking to be in the North Atlantic, and again going up towards Greenland, which we can't see, but we already had a look at. We've got the trough of low pressure underneath it through much of Central Europe. Also got a trough across Eastern America and into the Atlantic. The jet stream is going down there somewhere. And we're going to be pulling in very cold air from the northeast with that kind of situation. So let's have a look at that temperature anomaly. And look at this. Still basically going for a rather milder than average month, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's absolutely no chance based on that 500 millibar high anomaly. There's absolutely no chance we will come out with above average temperature anomalies in February. So the model is being completely ridiculous here with what it's going for. Slightly above average temperature anomalies in the UK and Ireland. It is going for a colder than average February through most parts of Europe, I have to say. So yes, that's okay. It does go for an average temperature anomalies there. But there's simply no way that the UK would come away with anything other than a colder than average month based on the 500 millibar height anomaly flowchart that we're seeing there. Temperature and precipitation anomalies look like that. So close to average. You can see actually it's a little, well, you probably can't see because it's not all that clearly defined, but it is a little bit wetter on the eastern side of the country, a little bit above average of precipitation on the eastern side of the country, most parts of Europe as well. The majority of that would be snow, of course, moving in from the east. The wind direction is looking like that. Again, quite difficult to make out, these black arrows. But you can see they are very much whipping in from an east or northeasterly direction. And actually we've got a very extreme sort of pattern here because the easterlies are like originating from here, coming across Europe in that sort of direction, and then they arrive into the UK with those east and northeasterlies. The easterlies then actually carry on into the North Atlantic, and they do even get over towards Canada with those easterlies. So that is an extremely blocked pattern. It's like the sort of blocking you would tend to associate with the most extreme cold months, actually, when you get those easterlies from Russia going through the Atlantic into Canada. So a very extreme blocking pattern that the model is going for in February, I have to say. But then again, it's still going for slightly above average temperature, which is for the UK, which is totally and utterly ridiculous. And it just makes you wonder how extreme the pattern has to get for this model to forecast a colder than average month in the UK. But anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's concentrate on what the model is actually showing, reading between the lines. And reading between the lines, so it looks like we're in for quite a cold winter, I've got to say. I think the JMA, in terms of its 500 millibar height anomaly, is hinting had a pretty cold winter, and one that gets colder as it goes along. So December is probably not all that far from average. Some colder snaps at times, but nothing particularly sustained. But blocking really starts to get going in January, and based on the wind direction in January, I think that could be a cold month. And then we finish up with quite a extreme block pattern setting up actually for February, which is month 3, so it's a long way out, and it probably won't come off as the model is forecasting it to. But if we did get that level of extreme blocking in February, we would be in for a very cold and very wintry month, whatever the model is forecasting with its temperature anomaly. It's wrong. We would be in for a very cold and wintry month in February if we had the synoptic pattern that the model is forecasting. So that's JMA, what JMA is forecasting for winter 2018-19. This will be included within the winter update that we're going to do on Saturday when we get all of the seasonal models together and see what we're all showing for the final time this season. You will find out on Saturday how many of the other long-range season models are agreeing with the ECM, with the JMA, I should say, and producing this cold, perhaps even very cold pattern by the end of the winter. You'll find out first thing on Saturday morning. Right, come back to this afternoon when we're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days in detail with the GFS, the ECM and the GEM shorter range models. That'll be with you later on this afternoon, but that's all for now, and thanks for watching.